Hello! Welcome to my very first speed paint. My name is Alice, and I'm an illustrator and designer. This painting I'm doing is part of a Zodiac series. I have to confess, I wasn't that familiar with all the different signs of the Zodiac before starting this series. I had completely forgotten how bizarre some of the symbols are, like Capricorns for instance. But I thought it would be a fun thing to try, and give me a chance to go outside of my usual style, which is more geared towards the children's art market. For this first video, I thought I would just talk a little bit about my digital painting process. I started with a rough line sketch that I then refined by drawing over it on a new layer. I usually do this a couple of times until I'm happy with the sketch. Then I started to block in color. I color each element on a separate layer, that way I can easily change the color if I want to later on. I try to retain as much flexibility as possible because I'm really indecisive and I like to be able to change things and try different colors up until almost the very end. That's sort of the double-edged sword of digital painting. It's endlessly flexible and forgiving, but it can also make you bad at committing to your marks and color choices. Here you see me making some tweaks and cleaning up edges and starting to add some lines and shadows to give the figures a bit more definition. I always use a textured brush for my paintings because I like those rough, uneven edges. For this painting I'm using Kyle brushes that I purchased a while back from the website. These brushes are now a part of Adobe Creative Cloud. I'll provide more details about my tools, including the names of the brushes I use, in the description below. So the bull's head really confounded me, and you'll see me redrawing and futzing with it over and over to try and get it right. I feel like in every painting there's usually one element that gives you a ton of grief, and in this painting it was definitely the bull. I didn't have a very strong concept for this piece. I landed pretty quickly on the idea of a woman warrior riding a bull. I had avoided drawing an animal in my previous Zodiac paintings, so I decided to go a bit more literal with this one. I designed the woman as I went, and I like how she ended up looking a little bit tribal, but also a bit of a mashup of different influences. Now I start to add in some textures. I use a screen print texture file that I just found online. Basically I copy and paste the texture into a layer mask on each of my color layers. This gives them a nice uneven speckly look, and some of the color underneath shows through. I use levels to adjust the strength of the mask. When it comes to digital painting, texture is really your best friend. It adds a lot of interest and variation to your painting, and it makes it look less obviously digital. There's nothing wrong with digital, so I don't know why I feel the need to sort of disguise it, but I personally prefer digital paintings that have some irregularities and they look like they could have been done using traditional media. The background for this piece I kept very simple with just the indication of some distant hills. In hindsight, I feel like the upper right looks empty, and maybe I could have added something more there. From here on out, I'm just making some final finishing tweaks. Oftentimes towards the end, I'll notice something that looks off, or something that isn't quite at the level of finish as the rest of the image. I tend to get impatient towards the end. I just want to finish the piece at this point, but those little adjustments can really make a huge difference and make the final piece look that much more polished. Right at the end, I add a hue saturation adjustment layer and I shift the color a bit towards magenta. I often use this adjustment to quickly experiment with different possible color schemes. Sometimes I go too far, but otherwise I find myself defaulting to the same color combinations, and so this is a good way to shake things up. I also increase the saturation to give the piece just a little bit more oomph. So we're almost at the end here. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Bye!